Hello and welcome. My name is Ken Calder and I'm connected with the Queensbury Baptist Church in Basford, Nottingham, here in the UK. Many years ago I started out as a raw and naive young pastor wearing the proverbial L plates. And over the next few weeks I hope to share with you some of the amusing and intriguing anecdotes that occurred in those early years as I floundered to find my feet and serve God in the community. Now, the wisest of all humans once said, "There is a time to laugh." Well, in today's difficult and challenging times, it's particularly important to keep a cheerful perspective. So throughout this short series, please join me for a light-hearted peek behind the scenes and hopefully a few chuckles as I'm thrown in at the deep end of pastoral work. Here we go then, part one of the series. I was 21 years of age, stepping into my very first pastorate at a town near Hertford. It was a small town. In fact, everything about that town was small. Our church building was compact, a converted fire station holding little more than 50 people. It boasted a tiny kitchen and also a minuscule vestry. In fact, if two people tried to enter at the same time, the vestry threatened to double as a holding tank. Mrs. Brett was our church cleaner, a wonderful, conscientious worker. She followed a set pattern and was very meticulous as she dusted and vacuumed her way around the building. When she first entered the church, one of her little habits was to check to make sure no monies were still in the offering bag. She would plunge into the bag for the customary search. But her hand always came out empty, except for just one occasion. One horrifying, heart-stopping occasion. A mouse had decided to nest in the offering bag. And as Mrs. Brett's hand reached into its cozy abode, the frantic mouse shot up her bare arm and dived off into a dark corner. All the screaming probably left our courageous cleaner with a sore throat. But, to her credit, she never once demanded danger money while she worked at the church. The church secretary was a DIY fanatic. He could turn his hand to anything. When the church floor started to look rather shabby, Mr. Beckenham decided to apply a coat of special sealant to the lino to restore the shine and to make our place of worship look more acceptable. There was just one problem. He was due to go on holiday. So, eager to please, I offered to paint the floor of the church while he was away. He needed some persuading, but I assured him I was capable. The tins of sealant and the brushes were passed to me, and away he went on holiday. Now, I'd been warned to paint the church floor early to give it time to dry, ready for Sunday services. And the instructions on the tin assured me the drying time was 24 hours. So, midweek, I applied the sealant, allowing plenty of time for drying. 3 days passed and the sealant was still not dry. On the Saturday, the church secretary returned from his holiday and the stubborn floor was still very wet. Nothing daunted, Sunday morning arrived and the small congregation filed in for the communion service. But when they stood up for the first hymn, they found they were bogged down, their shoes held fast in a gooey, treacle-like substance. It would probably be true to say that that particular morning we were the most stuck-up congregation in town. Now, as the new pastor, naive and inexperienced, my first official sick visit was to Hertford Hospital. But it didn't go according to plan. I entered the hospital ward to find that Jack, our church member, had only just returned from the operating theatre. It was one of the hottest summer days on record, and at the bedside, the lingering smell of the anaesthetic was quite strong. I hardly spoke a dozen words when I realized the ether was affecting me. I made my apologies and quickly headed for the exit, but I didn't get far. In a semi-conscious state, I collided with a door and fell to the floor in a heap. And as I collapsed, I could hear, ever so faintly in the distance, staff nurse calling out, "Catch him, catch him." I was dumped on a bed and left to recover. Eventually, I arrived home in an ambulance. And as I emerged from the rear of the ambulance, my anxious landlady appeared at the front door. "Where have you been?" Lamely and rather red-faced, I replied, "Hospital visiting." Now, our congregation boasted just one musician. Her name was Doreen, and she played an aging piano with sagging yellow keys. In those days, the advent of worship teams was still on the horizon, and instruments such as guitars only became fashionable when the Beatles shot to fame in later years. Doreen was single, lived outside the town, and like most people, travelled on public transport. Car ownership for the masses was still in its infancy, and buses in most country towns were few and far between. On Sunday evenings, the last bus left the town centre at 7:45, and Doreen had to be on it. Now, this inconvenience rather squeezed the time frame of our Sunday evening service, and quite often the sermon suffered 1,000 cuts, and the tempo of the last hymn exceeded the speed limit. Doreen could jazz up "Abide with Me" like no other instrumentalist. As soon as the benediction finished, the lid of the piano snapped down like the jaws of a crocodile, and doing her impersonation of Wonder Woman, Doreen became a blur as she flashed through the building in double quick time to pop up again at the town centre bus stop. Doreen was engaged to be married. Her fiancé was unconverted and had no interest in the church at all. Eventually, she became uneasy about the huge differences between them and began to have serious misgivings. Should she go ahead with the marriage or give up the young man? She agonized a long time over the decision, but finally decided to break off the engagement and cancel the wedding. She was truly heartbroken, but she felt it was for the best. On the very same day of the cancelled wedding, the Spirit of God visited Doreen in a special and marvelous way. She experienced a wonderful infilling of the Holy Spirit in her life, an amazing and memorable experience that more than compensated for the terrible disappointment she suffered. Well, that's it. But do join me next week, same time, same place, when among other things, I'll be telling the story of the church car that could only be driven in reverse, the young man who escaped death at a block of high-rise flats, and how I was made to eat humble pie by Billy Graham's song leader. Till then, bye.